Everyone. Welcome to the SG Germany today. I think we give it a couple more minutes for everyone to kind of get on board, and then we'll kick things off also once the live stream on YouTube has started. So sit tight, be patient. We'll be right back with our SG Germany this evening. All right, here we go. Welcome everyone to SG Germany today as the cyber edition. Just as everything else has sort of moved online, we're fitting the theme here in terms of being digital, being global, spanning across boundaries and borders. We want to welcome you to SG Germany today, and I would say we get things started. So first, I would like to introduce to you what the Space Generation Advisory Council is and where we're coming from, who we are hosting this today. So the SGAC was founded in 1999 as in support of the UN Program of Space Applications, and it essentially is the young professionals network of space students and young professionals, which represent our voice and opinion at the United Nations. And to date, there is more than 13,000 members globally in more than 150 countries. And the work that we do is we host global, regional, and local events. So globally, events like the SGC, the Space Generation Congress, or the Fusion Forum at any major space conference. And then regionally and locally, there have been more and more of these events which kind of zoom in on the specifics to a certain region, Europe or North America or Asia or wherever. And then also on a country level to talk about or to understand the needs of the young professionals and their ideas in this specific area. And so today, this is on the topic of Germany. The hosts of this evening are myself, Marcus Geis, and
hi, that's me, Luis.
Luis, we will be guiding you through this evening, the keynote discussion, the keynote speeches, and then the panel. But on the back end, we're a total of 9 young professionals in Germany, which have been preparing this all along. And the idea of those local events like ST Germany or ST France or any other is typically to come together and talk about a certain topic. Usually this is done in an in-person workshop, which talks about some local ideas, brings in local players and students and opinions, and then yields essentially a white paper in the end, which will be presented to the local government and the politicians to understand our voice and ideas from the young professionals in the space domain. Because everything has moved online, as I said, also we moved our event, which was originally planned for March of this year in Munich at the TUM. We pushed it back to this fall, and now here we are doing it online, which essentially is meant as a warm-up. So we still plan on having a physical event next year, where there will be representative. It's sort of like a seminar or a one-day workshop around the topic, the role of Germany in the space sector by 2030. The overall theme will be Space Made in Germany. And tonight, in any of the speakers and panels that you will be hearing are going to be talking about the role and the vision and the way forward in the space sector by Germany and German entities. And so, but it's not only about us hosting this and the panelists contributing, but it's also about you, the audience, so everyone else out there connecting from probably around the globe, that you chime in, you submit your questions, and you engage. And we'll be, yes, so I'll get back to this in a minute. Before we get really started with tonight's event, which is this panel here, you see, with the role of Germany in the space sector by 2030, I would like to announce that there's going to be a whole set of events, virtual events, all virtual and free, happening throughout November, all around the topic Space Made in Germany. So there will be later this week a space trivia night coming up, hosted by Airbus and Ariane Group. There will be another panel similar to today with keynotes and then panel discussion next Sunday about the transforming and preparing the German space ecosystem by 2030. And there will be a fireside chat and a few other virtual coffee hours and recruiting events by Mineric, Ariane Group, and others. So stay tuned, follow us on our social media channels or the website, and sign up for any of these free events, which are open to anyone. So another very important part of our work at SGAC is obviously to work with sponsors and partners, which help us providing the environment to host such events or also physical events. So in particular, I would like to thank here all of the sponsors and media partners that have helped us in preparing this essentially the entire year, and then bearing with us when we had to push it back and now move it online. So they've been really supportive and are a great representation of the ecosystem that is in place today in Germany. And we'll be hearing more about what they think the future will look like in a minute. So how does this work? I guess by now you've probably attended many of those virtual events using Zoom or other platforms. So please chime in, ask your questions using the Q&A function. There will be a global Q&A session at the end. So if you have questions regarding the keynotes, save those or submit them. We'll collect them, and there will be also the panels. And then after all of this, there will be a Q&A session, because it sort of revolves around the same topic. Also, just so you know, in terms of our legal note here, we'll be recording this and live streaming it on YouTube. So this will be there for the future. in case you want to go back and see what was said or what was going on here. And also, now that's again for you, the audience, to be very interactive and work here with us. We'll be using Mentimeter. It's a engagement platform that you might have heard of. So to get things started and try it out, I would like that you now go to menti.com and type in this code 143665 and 3, and we'll start with a first question. So let me if you've gone to menti.com, you should be able to see this now, and we would like to know where you're connecting from. So submit your answers, maybe even cities or towns. Lots of Germans, lots of Munich, some France, Bremen. Strong representation, very good. $25 people. We'll keep it up for a little bit, but we'll be using this throughout with some questions to get some statistics and see also what the audience thinks as we go through this. Okay. Okay, I think probably got most. Thanks for this. I'll be going back to the slides and handing over to Louis.
All right. So hello, everyone. So I'm co-hosting this event today with Marcus. Thanks, Marcus, for setting the scene and for the great intro. So without further ado, I think we can start then with the keynote speakers for this afternoon/evening. We'll have the opinion of OHB and Airbus on the role of Germany in the space sector by 2030. So I'm really happy to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Rolf Janowski. So thank you, Rolf, for being there this Sunday afternoon with us in a sunny Sunday afternoon here in Munich. I hope the weather is like that in Bremen too. So I'm going to introduce you first before we start. So Dr. Rolf Janowski is the Director of Pre-Development, Space System Studies and Proposals at OHB System based in Bremen. He finished his degree and PhD in aeronautics and astronautics at the University of Aachen back in the 90s. And since then, he has held several positions at OHB System. So he's also a member of the steering committee of the DGLR, which stands for the Deutsche Gesellschaft und Raumfahrt e.V., so member of the advisory board of the German Space Agency, researching the space environment as well, and is active at the International Astronautical Federation, and is a strong advocate and supporter of young professionals in the space community. So we couldn't have anyone better to start the virtual SG Germany. So thanks, Rolf, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you also for inviting me to this event. I would like to share, but I think I cannot yet. Let me see. Yes, now it's working. So I hope you can also not only hear me, but also see my screen. So thanks again for inviting me for this keynote, the role of Germany in the international space sector by 2030. So I've been invited to answer the following 4 questions. How will Germany effectively deliver on the expectation and ambition throughout the 30s? What will Germany leadership look like in the years to come? What are the strategic priorities and main axes of action? And what should be accomplished in the short term to be better placed in the long term? So let's come to the first question. How will Germany effectively deliver in the expectation and ambition throughout the 20s? I'm convinced that space systems and their downstream related services and products have become an indispensable infrastructure in our daily life, like, for example, power grids like water supply or road networks. Germany plays actually major roles in almost all of them, all European institutional space programs. I will not read them with you. You can read it on your own. A few of them I will now address a little bit later to show you which these programs are and what roles Germany can play, for time reasons only as examples. As I've said, space will play an increasingly more important role in the future for major questions of, for example, science, society, and economic examples. And economy, sorry. Examples are, for example, in the science domain. One of 3 examples I can address. With Athena, which is called the Advanced Telescope for High Energy Astrophysics, Europe will launch in 2031, so in about 10 years, a giant X-ray telescope to address key questions in astrophysics. It will look for hot gas structures in the universe and for supermassive black holes. Another important mission, also so-called L-class large mission, will be LISA, a laser interferometer space antenna, which will be operated by Europe from 2037 onwards, which is for the first time a giant gravity wave detector in space. It will consist basically of 3 satellites separated by 5 million kilometers. And also this mission will open a completely new observation window for astronomers. So what I wanted to say here is I'm very much convinced that the excellent science we are already doing today will continue into the future. Another example, Earth observation. Europe has already an excellent role in Earth observation, and Europe will maintain and expand its leading role in Earth observation for scientific purposes as well as operational applications. Let's start with the operational applications. We have here Copernicus. You all know about the existing Copernicus satellites which are in orbit, but this year ESA and the European Union have decided to start the implementation of a next generation of new satellite systems, which differ from the existing generation by using different instruments, using different spectra. These 6 satellites are CO2M for the monitoring of greenhouse gases, LSTM, land surface temperature monitoring mission, CHIME is a hyperspectral imaging mission, ROSE-L is an L-band SAR, CIMRE is a radio wave mission, and Crystal is to monitor with an altimeter snow and ice developments. The first mission to come will be the CO2 Copernicus mission, which will monitor from 2025 onwards in an extremely high resolution the sources and sinks of greenhouse gases, mainly CO2, and by this it will become an important tool to control the obligations as agreed in the Climate Convention COP21 in Paris. Here at the lower left image you see from the existing satellites in orbit how Earth looks like in the different spectra. The other example for operational missions is weather forecasting. The right image you see an artist's impression of Meteosat 3rd generation, which is the next generation of weather forecasting satellites operated from the geostationary orbit. These 6 satellites will consist of 2 different types with 2 different sets of instruments and will become operational in the next years. In the domain of exploration, Europe plays already an important role in the exploration of Moon and Mars, but it will continue into the future. The Lunar Gateway, which is a man-tended outpost in a lunar orbit, we will, as Europeans, provide crew transportation capabilities with the European Service Module of the Orion spacecraft. There will be a habitat, which comes from Europe, and also a logistic module, a refueling module, which is called Esprit. You see them here in the lower left image. This Esprit module is this one at the second module in this long row. The Orion spacecraft is here at the right corner, and the Habitat is here in the middle. And what is important to know, although it's called Lunar Gateway, in a second phase, this station will be transferred from a lunar orbit to Mars. For this purpose, there is this giant power propulsion element which will propel this station using electric propulsion to a Mars orbit. The other example is Mars Sample Return, a robotic sample return mission with European contributions to bring the first Mars sample ever from Mars to Earth for scientific investigations, and Europe will contribute there with a rover, the so-called sample fetching rover, the Earth Return Orbiter, which transfers to the Mars orbit, captures in space the sample and brings it back to Earth. Other example, I have to skip for time reasons, but my first summary is that thanks to the continuous investments, Europe and Germany have really established an excellent infrastructure in space. So this is a matter of fact as already today. Many sectors on Earth rely on this infrastructure, and the continuous provision of satellite-based services is really key. It is for me not conceivable that one day our society will go without these services. So I am convinced it will extend into the futures. And even better reliability and performances will be asked for by the customers. Beside these existing services, new services and systems will appear, like, for example, video streaming from space, on-orbit servicing systems for maintenance, repair, removal, quantum key distribution from space for even more secure communication systems, but also manufacturing in space. And I'm also very much convinced that we will see many more of these fantastic new scientific missions and also exploration missions. So some facts and figures on Germany's involvement in space. Here on the left side, you see for the years 2017 to 2019, the number of employees in the space domain all over Europe. And you see Germany has behind France the second largest space industry in Europe. About 19% of European industry stuff is coming from Germany. And you see also in the evolution from 2017 to 2019 that there is a strong growth. In this time period, the number of people has grown by 15%, which is well above the average of Europe, which is only 8.5% growth. And what is also important to mention, that these jobs of staff working in space are really high quality jobs. You see here in this right lower corner table, the qualification profiles of the people working in space. And you see 1 and 2 universities degrees from 3 to 5 years. In total, more than 70% of all staff have a high university degree. So I think in Germany, we play, thanks to our economic strength, an important role in all European major space programs, either as mission and system prime for development of space systems, but also in the role of subsystem providers or as source for advanced technology developments. Space is one of the most strategically important sectors, not only in terms of promoting research and technology, but also in terms of global political power. And thanks to the sustainable political support of space, a strong and diverse industrial basis of space companies and excellent academic research and recruitment of young talents like you, it is likely that Germany will maintain and expand its position into the future. Next question, what will Germany look like in the years to come? So every 3 years, major decisions in Europe on the next years to come are made at the ESA Council on ministerial level. The last one took place in November 2019 in Sevilla, the so-called Space 19 Plus. And at this conference, Germany subscribed by far the largest space budget here in Europe. You see here in this table the distribution. Germany subscribed about 3.3 billion euros for the 3 years to come, which is roughly 23% of the overall budget. You see here also in this upper left image, the total subscription was about 14 billion euro, and the major contributions are for Earth observation, for space transportation, and for human and robotic exploration. But on top of these ESA contributions, Germany also contributes to the ESA budgets, to the national budgets, for example, by contributing to the national space program financed by the Minister of Economy, roughly 290 million euro per annum. We have a space budget of the Minister for Defense for reconnaissance satellites like SARA. We have also a budget from the Minister of the Interior for reconnaissance purposes with a high resolution electro-optical satellite called UPSAT, and already shown the budget for the Meteosat third generation, which is coming from the Minister of Traffic, and also contributions to the European space budget, not to be forgotten. What are the strategic priorities and main axes of action? So the clear priority in Germany is Earth observation, where Germany is by far the strongest supporter of that. Next is robotic exploration, where Germany is the main contributor to the ISS, to human spaceflight and microgravity research. And third priority is space transportation, with about 20% funding of the development of Ariane 6. Here in this image, you see also the evolution of the annual turnover over the decades. You see, let's say, an increase in telecommunication, which has faded out a little bit, but a strong increase in the last years to come for Earth observation. What should be accomplished in the short term to be better placed in the long term? We have some risks. The European space industry relies to a large extent on the public funding by European customers. You see this in this image. These blue columns are the programs financed by public customers, increasing from about 3 billion per year in 2010 to about 5.5 billion per year in 2019. So about 63% of the annual turnover in space industry was financed by institutional customers in 2019. And this means, of course, that in case that the institutional demand decreases in Europe, for example, due to a lack of financial resources, which is not so unlikely in the pandemic, the strong European position may be at risk. Other risk, the space sector is under a specific global competitive pressure. Space system markets are globally heavily regulated. They are not subject to international trade agreements, and they are strongly supported by national policies. Today, USA finances about 50%, 55% of the institutional budgets worldwide, followed by China with 13% and Europe with 14%. There's a massive flow of research and development budget and innovation promoted by the US institutional programs, also from the military branch, which creates in Europe a technology gap with consequences on our innovation, on our system performance and our cost. And as a consequence, a number of European space programs are today dependent on foreign technologies and solutions to achieve their cost and performance. One example, US satellites, for example, can offer solutions
Well, I think we lost Rolf in the meantime. So let's just wait a few seconds to know if he can reconnect. Otherwise, we will jump and go towards the second keynote speaker, Andreas. Let's just wait a few seconds. But in the meantime, Marcus, maybe you can share the screen as well and see where we are, where people are coming from and dialing in our event. There you go.
So I hope you can hear me again.
Yeah, thanks, Rolf. So you dropped. It was just a few seconds. So
Yes.
then you may continue. Then I'll just remind you, you have 1-2 minutes to finish.
Yes, I will finish very fast. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Everything is fine.
Yes. So what I wanted to say is we are dependent on satellite technologies from the US. We also see changes of requirements on ground. For example, in telecommunications, thanks to new technologies like glass fiber networks, internet streaming. The needs of our users regarding connectivity, latency, bandwidth, and so on have changed drastically. And that, as a consequence, the need for classic geostationary telecom satellites has decreased drastically from about 20 satellites per year at the beginning of the last decade to about 7 to 8 in the last 2 years. So we see here also some risks. New constellations appear with smaller telecom satellites in low Earth orbits, which are developed for new applications. So coming to my last chart, what should we do? What should we accomplish in the short term to be better placed in the long term? So we have to have a sustainable political support from Europe and its member states to allow for a level playing field in this global competition on political leadership and economic power. We have to have a careful and permanent monitoring of new trends and changes in demands of our space system customers to follow these trends. We have to invest into new breakthrough technologies, startups, entrepreneurs, and new space-based services and products. And we have to continue also the fundamental and applied research to expand our knowledge of our universe and to solve our global societal problems. In Germany, I think we have to keep the responsibility for complete systems, not to fall back on a supplier level, and we have to reduce our dependency on critical technologies from non-European sources by becoming independent. Last but not least, we have to invest into education of young talents in all relevant engineering disciplines. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rolf. Super interesting. Also, thanks for bringing the perspective and putting things into place, starting from the CMIN 19. So this is really helpful for the panel that will come afterwards. I see we have 57 participants joining us on Zoom. So I just want to say that we will not do Q&A right after the keynotes, but if you do have questions to be addressed later on, you can start typing them and we'll have people that will treat them, and then we'll bring it to the panel later on. Now let's move to our second keynote speaker. So we're gonna listen from Airbus, from Andreas Liedenthal, Airbus, on the role of Germany in the space sector by 2030. Hi, Andreas. Maybe you can switch on your camera.
I did it already.
Okay, there you go. So I see that you are online, so I will just introduce you before we start then. Yep. So Andreas Liedenthal holds a degree in aerospace engineering, and he started his professional career with Airbus Defence and Space in Immenstadt. So in around Friedrichshafen, Lake Constance area. Since then, he has held different positions within the areas of satellite systems, space equipment, development, and production. After a short period in the aviation area, Andreas became a member of the executive committee of the OHB system and held the position of chief operating officer for more than 5 years. Since last year, Andreas is the head of space systems business operations and spacecraft equipment. He also acts as head of Airbus Space Systems in Germany and has been recently elected VP of the IAF. So thanks, Andreas. Thanks for being there and joining us on this Sunday afternoon. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. And without coordinating in detail with Rolf, I think we are pretty well coordinated because I want to, let's say, a little bit, let's say, widen the view. I think the core business definitely is what Rolf was describing. So our business with European Commission, European Space Agency, and the ecosystem in which we are there. So I would like to, let's say, widen the spectrum a little bit on next page, where what we see as the, let's say, strategic directions where we want to go in Germany clearly is, everybody knows that, let's say, space is becoming more and more let's say, normal technology field, and a lot of applications which are based on space technology are meanwhile, let's say, commonly used by everybody. And what we are going to see is more and more a merger of different applications, meaning also different space technologies into new applications, into new business fields. And this is what we are assuming, that there will be a space infrastructure which is contributing widely to let's say, a data-driven environment, a lot of cloud-based application, which are assuming not only connectivity, but also using navigation data, using Earth observation data, etc. So what we are assuming, particularly here in Europe and in Germany, is that we are more, let's say, even more concentrating than in the past on optical radar technology, also in the area of telecommunication. And Airbus is investing quite heavily in, particularly also in Germany, to be prepared for the next step. So what we see in Germany in terms of, let's say, implementation programs is 4 areas. The first one is being the architect for the systems and systems provider in the space domain, which means not only building satellite, but also to offer services, offer capabilities for operating space infrastructure, up to, let's say, supporting those small companies, startups, which are related to specific domains of value-adding services, as an example. So technology ownership is a key. This is expected always by, let's say, not only Germany, but European customers and stakeholders, that we are not only relying on European technology, but that we are, let's say, progressing on a sustainable basis. And national capabilities is increasingly important. And for exploration, outer space activities, of course, I come later to that. Rolf was already touching that. There is quite a huge potential. What are the big programs in front of us? I come to that, let's say, on another chart. So let's move to the other one, to the next one. So industrially, Germany, Rolf was showing it in the diagram, around 10,000 people are working on many places in Germany, which is quite an exciting environment. And, you know, this we have to understand, particularly for those who are new in this business field, this is not normal in Europe. So other countries like France are in a situation where they have a much more consolidated industry with big players, very few small players. So we have all of them. And I think this is a pretty intense and fruitful interaction between bigger players like OHB and Airbus and a lot of smaller players, small and medium enterprises, startups, new companies created by universities. So we do have, let's say, a rather federal organization of space activities in Germany. And this is, therefore, it's not a surprise, because it is definitely on top of the political agenda. They are stimulating to have this federal industrial setup in Germany, which is not always understood by our European partners. But I think it is a strength. It is definitely a strength, because it means everybody can contribute to his capabilities, and it is really a stimulation of creativity across Germany. So when it comes to an outlook for the next 10 years, next chart, please. What we see is, let's say, a lot of Earth observation. Rolf mentioned Copernicus program, but also on a national basis, we are investing heavily in Earth observation for radar, for multispectral resolution. And so this is ongoing. What we are also seeing is in the not only Earth observation side, but also in the telecommunication side, more and more strengthening of our security-related engagement and involvement. So next will be, in the next decade, let's say, the growth of the capabilities, the introduction of national capabilities into a European environment, in a European ecosystem. So far, we have a situation that much more space programs which are related to security, to let's say disaster protection, to military application, are running on a national basis. There are only some few which are running on a European basis, and we are pretty sure and the trend is there that this will further and further Europeanized, that industry in Europe and in the nations will contribute to bigger systems. It's also a matter of financing. If you take the FCAS system, which is due for 2035, we are talking about 50 billion of euros. Of course, this is an amount of money which no single nation in Europe can afford. And therefore, and the interesting part is we are talking about a defense system for Europe, which includes as an integrated part with a lot of different aspects, space technologies, satellites, inter-satellite links, from orbit to ground to aircraft. So this is, let's say, a pretty new field of application and of a, let's say, widening business field. So on the next page, I've found it could be interesting. So there was a study done by the KPMG company, what's to be expected in 2030. And let me highlight, let's say, some of the most interesting aspects which are presented here. So first of all, number one is space travel will be collaborative multinational venture. So which means there will be a venture and it is operational. Let's see. So I think we are on a good track. Then on exploration, by 2030, we are successfully mining on the moon for water. I think this is probably, well, here you see 2030 in, let's say, space, let's say timing is tomorrow morning. A 10 years time frame is easily bridged by starting the development now, doing the development, let's say going for a launch and then doing the mission. Therefore, it is not really visionary, but at least it sets, let's say, a number of challenges which are in front of us. And so number 8, we will finally discover evidence of life in space by 2030. So which means really confirmed, not the things which we have seen already. Number 14 is pretty interesting, particularly for the young participants of this panel, is the leading space businesses of 2030 are startups of today, which, you know, working in Airbus, it should scare me a little bit, but it's the opposite, I can tell you. I'm really interested to see how the startups of today are ramping up, are creating business fields, are growing fast and surpassing the existing industries. So let's see. I think within 10 years to see that the big companies are surpassed by the others is quite challenging, but you know, for all the young participants here, so this is your challenge. So coming to space data, so space data by 2030 will become completely commoditized, which I assume is definitely to be expected. And in terms of sustainability, so sustainability in space will benefit sustainability on Earth. I think this is always what we are striving for, that space technology is supporting life on Earth. And on 29th, space will be forced to accelerate quickly as an operational domain for armed forces. Well, we see that already, not in Germany, but in other countries in Europe and in the United States, of course, and in China and so on. So this is what we are going to see. And in terms of scientific exploration, so next page, in illustration, next page, yes, please, thanks. This is an illustration what Rolf was expressing on the, let's say, short and midterm investments, which we see in Europe and in Germany. And if you ask, let's say, what is the German part of that, I think we can say that Germany has catched up to become the leading space nation in Europe since now a couple of years. So the last the ESA ministerial conference has demonstrated that Germany has taken visibly a leading role, but I think that was already seen in some other areas. So internationally, of course, what we see is that there is a lot of, let's say, pressure coming from the billionaires who are investing heavily in new space technologies in the US, which are also now more and more coming to Europe. I just saw an article this morning that Elon Musk is now setting up a company in Frankfurt for their new Starlink constellation in order to promote the business in Germany by using his constellation program. At the same time, you might know that on a European level, we are currently discussing if Europe will invest in a new constellation which should compete against these systems. So at the same time, you see a kind of, let's say, if you take the war speech, infiltration of the American systems into Europe. So it will be a very interesting competition coming up. And what you see here, let's say, what is next is that we are going for lunar landing capabilities, return to Earth capabilities, building up an infrastructure which is using resources from the moon, but also from Earth in order to prepare for, let's say, setting up the moon as the basis to go further. Of course, Mars is on the agenda. And but I think what will be at stake is to use moon as a permanent basis in order to be able to support more, let's say, far distance missions with using the excellent conditions, being on the moon, launching space missions from there, which is much more efficient, energy efficient than doing it from Earth. Therefore, it will be, I think, in the future, by 2030, I assume, we are probably just in the process of ramping up our capabilities to have that as a, let's say, permanently manned base in which we are providing the necessary logistics for go further. And this, of course, offers a lot of opportunities. I think if you compare, let's say, the enthusiasm, the innovative power, which is in the space domain, which is currently visible, let's say, in the last 2 years and by today, compared with the situation of the last, let's say, 3 decades, which I personally can judge, it's really amazing. So in going into space, selecting space as your domain for engage yourself, to develop yourself, and to, let's say, contribute to this fast development of new missions, new opportunities, new technologies, is a marvelous opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Awesome. Thanks for bringing a lot of new points then for the discussion later on. Super interesting. I think just to remind everyone that if you want to put forward questions, use the Q&A tab and write down your questions. I think we're going to need them later on once we start the panel. So yeah, I think it's time to move on to the panel. We have 2 awesome first keynote speakers, and we're going to welcome 4 new panelists, which we're going to introduce right away. I think now it's the time for you to switch on your cameras. There you go. And maybe it's time, Marcus, as well, to check on the Mentimeter to see where people are dialing in from. I also want to remind everyone that now that we're going to go for the panel, there will be some questions which will appear, new questions, and they will be related with the questions we'll putting forward to the panelists. So let's see if we can take some aspects from that to also discuss in the panel. There you go. So I think clearly Munich in the middle. So I'm in Munich. We see some people from France. Yeah,
we've gained some people from the US, India. So it's truly beneficial to do this stuff online. That's definitely something we've learned the last few months. While it lacks some other things, but this is definitely one that eases things a lot. Yeah.
At least one person from the Jupiter. That is amazing.
Wonder who that is, yeah? Maybe they can show themselves later. Okay, so we're at 43 on this one, but I'd say we go right into the panels, introduce everyone, set the scene, and then get the conversation started.
Yes, let's do that. So we heard that Germany boasts and enjoys a strong space sector, and this is largely the successful realization of very important programs, especially in the field of navigation, Earth observation, human spaceflight, and exploration. We also see that the country research and development performance has been increasing, and there is a renewed interest in space. And this has been quite visible with the outcome of the ministerial conference in last year, is a ministerial conference. So I think both Andreas and Hovi already addressed part of this, but I just want to introduce then the panel and put forward these rhetoric questions. How will Germany going to effectively deliver on this expectation and quite high ambition throughout the next years, throughout the 20s, and let's aim for 2030. How could this leadership look like, knowing the context in Germany? What are then the strategic priorities that one should have? So these are the rhetoric questions that I hope then to start addressing with the panel. So without further ado, let's then introduce, I think by now all of you are with the camera on. So I will start with Roger Fürstner, Professor Fürstner from the University of the Bundeswehr, so the University of the German Armed Forces here in Munich. So he's the Director of Space Technology, located at the Faculty for Aerospace Engineering at the University der Bundeswehr in Munich since 2009. Before that, he was a systems engineer at Airbus Defence and Space in Friedrichshafen, and among others, involved in the development of the Bepi Colombo spacecraft, which is now coming close to Mercury, as we all know. He received his PhD from the University of Stuttgart in 2002. At the UniBW, he recently became the Dean of Aerospace Engineering, and he serves as one of the managers of the newly established Research Center Space. So thanks, Roger, thanks for being there.
Okay, the next one joining us from a very similar location, also in the Ottobrunn Neubiberg area in Munich, is Robin Wachsmann. He is a propulsion engineer at ESAR Aerospace and earned his bachelor's and master's degree in engineering from the Technical University in Munich. At ESAR Aerospace, Robin, he is responsible for valve development and prototype realization for their coming up micro launcher. And just to give you a quick introduction on ESAR Aerospace, it is a new space company started in 2018, located in Munich, as I said, and their product is to deliver flexible and sustainable and cost-effective access to space with their micro launcher Spectrum. And they're targeting up to 1,000 kilograms into low Earth orbit. So thanks, Robin, for joining us here.
Thank you very much for having me, and hello, everybody.
So thanks for being there. Now we have the next one, Pooja Pandey from Planet. I guess you're based in Berlin. So Pooja is Imperial College London graduate, currently leading strategic relationships at Planet in Berlin, supporting companies across various sectors in their digital transformation and adoption of remote sensing technologies. She's helping Planet customers capturing value from the satellite imagery by advising them on architecting and developing solutions that enable them to make global change actionable. Before Planet, she was a geospatial analyst building maps for the automotive industry in Munich. She has an educational background in environmental science, business, and computational science, having studied across London and Berlin. So welcome, Pooja. So very interesting profile and diverse. So thanks for being there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And last but not least, definitely not least, is Bärbel Deisting from Bavaria. She's the Director of Space and Space Applications at Bavaria, which is the Bavarian Aerospace Cluster located in Oberpfaffenhofen by Munich. She is the German ESA Business Applications Ambassador and a member of the Scientific Committee on the Navis Center in Hanoi. And she was Vice President of NEREUS, the Network of European Regions Using Space Technologies. And she holds a degree in mathematics from the LMU in Munich. I think with this, we have introduced everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
And let's jump right in there, Luis.
Yeah, let's go. So as I said in the beginning, I already introduced the context. So we're going to start with a question, a general question for all of you. So we already heard from Rolf and Andreas on the point of view from OHB and Airbus. So we'd be interested then on the point of view of the other four organizations that are here represented. So again, German space investment and contribution to ESA is on the rise. R&D priorities and commitment for the upcoming years are on the rise. I would like to know what are your organization plans to follow on this ambition? And I would start with Pooja from Planet. So can you tell us about Planet and how you want to jump on this ambition? Pooja.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, first of all. And just to give you a little bit of background on Planet. So Planet is a global startup. We have headquarters in San Francisco, and the second largest office outside of the headquarters is in Berlin. So not only are we sourcing 46% of all our satellites from Europe, but we have over 100 employees within Berlin. And with this with the increase in contribution and investment, we're definitely looking to increase on both of those numbers moving forward in the future. And yeah, we're trying to make a big footprint within Europe from the Planet side. Thank you.
Cool. Let's move on then to university. So Roger, University Bundeswehr. So what can you tell us about your plans on answering this German ambition? I think we cannot hear you, Roger. I think you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. That's all right.
So
yeah,
unmuting helps.
Yeah.
Okay, again, so we have two big areas usually we consider at universities. That's the education, of course, of the students, and that's the research side. And I think on both sides, we have to react, and this is what we try here. So we try to strengthen the research, which is, of course, supported by this strong involvement of Germany in the ESA programs. And so we founded the Research Center Space, for example, just beginning of this year, which is combining across faculties, across departments, all our knowledge, which is relevant for space. I mean, you know, space is interdisciplinary, so it's not just aerospace engineering. There's many other engineering and even social sciences and whatever needed, lawyers and so on. And we try to connect all the knowledge we have at the university with all the different departments, and then focus on space. That's on the research side. And of course, we try to make our programs for aerospace engineering, for example, but also other programs attractive and connected, that education, let's say, connected to the space application, so that people understand that if they study a certain subject, that this can be very important in the future to support space activities. Which is, I think, in general, an important point is that we see some decrease in the interest of people, of young people in technology, in mathematics, and physics, and engineering, and we have to keep, let's say, the supply of young, well-educated people, of course, to the industry and to German industry, but industry in Europe and all over the world, so that we can keep up with all these ideas that have been presented already in the keynotes. Okay, thanks.
No, thank you, Roger. So now we heard from academia. So I will move on to Bärbel. And there, maybe you can explain what Bavaria is in more detail. I would like to know, given the context I did in the past, so how can this cluster, so Bavaria, support the government and industry in order for Germany to build on this ambition?
Thank you. Yes, Bavaria is an association commissioned by the Bavarian state government with the management of the cluster aerospace. And this is the natural link between, I would say, ministry and the association. We have more than 300 members working in the field of space applications and aviation. And what we are doing is in line with our objectives. This is to encourage cooperation on the one hand between industries, SMEs, startups, research institutes, universities, on a regional as well as national and international base, as well as to link you with the political sphere and agency on various levels. So we are supporting the members, the cluster members and actors with services and activities or information events on the one hand. And of course, we support you with marketing activities in order to enhance your visibility on a global stage. And we are supporting you as well with, for example, international collaboration fora, which is at the moment really useful in terms of COVID-19, and that we don't have the opportunity to meet each other in reality, as you said before, for this event.
Oh, awesome. So I would like then to close this first round with Robin. So Robin, what are your views on about this ambition, and also saying what going back to what Andreas said before, that he expects the startups today to be the leaders of 2030. Tell us how you're going to do that by 2030.
Yeah, let me maybe start with a bit more introduction about ourselves. Yeah, we were a group of students at the Technical University of Munich, and yeah, founded in 2018 with the goal of the students who worked with rockets basically their whole career at university to actually build a rocket which we can bring to orbit. And that's what we want to do end of next year, actually. So I think it's a really ambitious goal, but yeah, we are all super into the topic. And yeah, for the time that changes for us, importantly, is yeah, as Andreas and Rolf already said, that availability, the technique available is changing. It's smaller now, it's cheaper, so it's actually possible for a private company with private investors to finance all that and build the rocket at comparable cost. And it's not something only possible by governments anymore. And one big milestone everybody knows probably is that even a private company brought astronauts to space now. So yeah, it's exciting, and we think there's a lot of potential for a lot of small startups. And the way we want to do it, yeah, we are super motivated students, a young team, growing really quickly. Like we celebrated our 100th employee a year ago after starting beginning of the year with 20 employees, and we are building up our manufacturing right here in Munich, or in Ottobrunn to be precise. And yeah, that's our vision.
Thanks, Robin. So we'd like to know a bit more about that. Would also be interesting to also know what is the point of view of startups in general. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that later on. So cool. Then Marcus, maybe I can hand it over to you, and then after that we just open up. We continue the panel with open questions. I will invite all of you to also unmute, so it becomes more, let's say, natural and the flowing discussion.
Sure, perfect. Thanks for that first round. The next question is a matter of prioritization. So I'm gonna go back here, sharing my screen for everyone to see. Also, heads up, audience, this is another one where you are asked to contribute. So the question is, how would you prioritize the following domains in Germany with regards to 2030? So you think human spaceflight and exploration, launchers, Earth observation, or space for defense and security will be #1 priority. And while the audience hopefully submits their answers, let's just go and ask some of our panelists. So maybe starting back at Rolf, what do you think will be the top priority topics in 2030?
Yeah, for me, clearly, it's Earth observation. We have so many problems, global challenges on our Earth, where space systems are really a unique tool to contribute to the solution. So I'm very much convinced that for our society, for our economics, we need more and more Earth observation systems. I have shown a few examples, but there are many, many others. Mm-hmm. And I think on the commercial side, we have Planet with us, and they can also tell us a little bit more about commercial use of Earth observation. So I'm pretty much convinced that we will continue to use our satellites for Earth observation, either in LEO or in GEO, as an infrastructure for scientific purposes. But I mentioned the Copernicus satellites. They will be used for monitoring contracts which have been signed regarding, for example, the control of greenhouse gas emissions from space. So I'm convinced that it will be Earth observation.
Thank you. Pooja, you would agree with this, or with our audience as well?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Rolf said, which was really spot on here, Earth observation is definitely Planet's priority going forward as well. And I see that being a priority in 2030, because not only does it provide a solution to some of the largest challenges that we have at hand today, but it is also a catalyst for digital and sustainable transformation in society. At Planet, you know, our mission is to make global change actionable, visible, and you know, everyone can act on it together, and that's really what we're working towards here.
Yeah. While I would, in principle, agree, I think if space traffic management in the third category, in the yellow one, is meant as debris avoidance, debris protection, debris removal, I'm afraid, let's say, what we are currently seeing with all the constellations which are brought into orbit with, let's say, honestly, little coordination with a lot of risks. I think, let's say, I'm afraid space traffic management will become an urgent issue, an emergency issue. And with all the respect for, let's say, all the applications which we want to see, if it is telecommunication, Earth observation, and so on, if it comes to a situation where all these future applications, all these space technologies and infrastructure is endangered, we will have to put highest priority on that field.
Very good point, Andreas. Thanks for chiming in. Is this something that Bavaria could maybe, foster on a political side? Because I think it's more of like, if there's no laws for trash cleaning up, then there's no business model for it and nobody will do it. So is this something that the cluster could highlight a little more?
Usually, probably this is more done on a national level, but coming back to this question here, I'm for Earth observation as well. And what I like to link are applications which are integrating Earth observation, which is missing from my point of view. That will become more and more important here. And having in mind what Andreas showed us before, there was, I think, one point mentioning every business will be a space business, which will be, I think, in line that there will be a strong focus on space-based applications and services, which will come up and will be more and more important in the future.
Okay, great. From a academic side of things, Roger, are these topics equal in the way you're teaching them or in your center of space, or do you also have some preferences on that end?
Well, I guess it depends a little bit. If you look at it from where you can earn most money, it's probably Earth observation, but of course that's not our view from a university side. Applications is important, and it was mentioned already by Andreas that, for example, space traffic management is important, but other things also. So I think Earth observation cannot exist with other elements of this, what is shown here. Even, let's say, even the exploration or human spaceflight, of course, is pushing maybe technologies which are then vice versa for Earth observation. So I would not try to give a priority to one of the topics. I think it is each of the topic has its importance on the one or the other level, and I think what we have to decide is rather how we want to contribute of each of these topics. And of course, we could say, okay, we just do Earth observation and nothing else. But then we would depend a lot on other countries, for example, who provide the launchers, for example, if we just would do Earth observation, for example. I mean, that's just a simple one. And the third point, space traffic management, or more general, this sustainable space. I mean, I think that's important. It has been mentioned with the big constellations. If we are not aware of the fact that even the space around Earth is not infinitive, you know? I mean, we made the same mistake with Earth. We thought Earth's resources are infinitive and we can put all pollution into the air and nothing happens because it's so large and huge. And now we learn it's not infinitive and it does affect the environment. And I think the same could happen to near space, near Earth space. I mean, therefore, I think you see, it's a complex system, and I think we have to have the global view and then decide, okay, what do we want to push on our side, on the German side, on the European side, on the global side, and share maybe also, let's say, a little bit the work so that we have the whole picture, so to say, covered from all sides. So I think we will keep on to in terms of teaching and research, put our efforts more or less in all areas.
Good, very good. And in terms of ESA Aerospace's view, is this sustainability aspect part of your mission or vision, or how do you address that? Or at all?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I definitely agree with Roger on the point that all those points are super important in total, and you cannot have one on its own. And yeah, especially for us on the launcher side, it's a basis for everything. Like, you won't have Earth observation, you won't have anything without a launcher that gets your device into space. And also that's the most price driving factor, especially for smaller satellites. And yeah, the part where every business is going to be a space business, it's going to be completely price driven at some point. And there, I think it's super important to have a competition, especially for launchers, going on about manufacturing and producing them at lowest price as possible. And also, the national level decides for the debris. If you have the launcher, they can set the rules. And for the environmental reasons, on low Earth orbit, I don't see it as critical as on geostationary orbits, because it's way easier to handle debris, because you basically just have to slow down or wait a little bit and your satellite gonna burn in the atmosphere. So it's definitely an issue, but the biggest issue further away. And also that's technology that, in my opinion, depends highly on launchers, that you have cheap launchers that might be able to collect broken satellites maybe. And it's hard to do the prioritization. I think for Germany, it's something that's missing at the moment, to have the cheap access to space. So we are still highly dependent on the US, on Russia. And I think it's important to focus that changes. So on where things have to change, I would actually put the launchers first, because Earth observation and exploration is a pretty good basis. Also, space for defense and security, it also depends on the launchers. Like, I guess it's quite important for a military point of view to have local possibilities to start your satellites and not having to cooperate with other nations on every project you have.
Okay, great. So I guess on the micro launcher competition side, Germany's doing pretty well there in the new space sector. So lots to look forward to. Thank you very much. I would say hand it back over to Luis, and we'll do another round of Mentimeter shortly. Thanks.
Yeah, already, Robin, you already addressed then one of the major weaknesses or barriers that you see in Germany, which is the lack of own capability to launch into space. So I would be curious to know the opinion of the other people on the panel. So where do you think are the major weaknesses or barriers that will not allow at the end Germany to deliver on this high ambition? Is it coming from politics? Is it coming from the way in Germany the system is organized? Is lack of the right investment into the key technologies that will allow us then to go to the moon, think about mining and so on? So I would like to know your opinion about that. What are the barriers? For the one who wants to take it.
Well, I may start
Yeah.
the process and the discussion. I mean, I think we are already quite well established and in a good situation to contribute to this future, as it was described also in the keynote. So, of course, there's always risks, and things could be better in the one or the other place. So one point, of course, this is the view also from education and university side. What we see is what I mentioned before, that we see some decreasing interest in natural sciences and mathematics, and this could, in the long run, of course, be a sort of a risk that we cannot keep the pace in terms of technology development or building systems and so on. So I think on our side, this is for sure something which is something we are really looking into very seriously, because we need to increase the interest of the very young people in schools already, that they are interested in the topics and I think this is connected also to, let's say, the public view on space and space technology, that people should be maybe more aware on how important space is. I mean, of course, space is fascinating in terms of, these astronauts and rockets and all that stuff. So I think there's a sort of a fascination, but people should be also aware that, let's say, the most part of the space is business and is very important for our daily life. And it's not just about fascination, but it's really useful for us. And this importance, I think we have to make clear to the people, and I think hopefully then also the interest would start again, that young people want to follow up a natural science a career and engineering career and in being involved in the space business. So that's one point. I at least on our side, that's really something we are concerned a little bit.
Yeah, good for you. So I would then, does anyone wants to answer this one?
Yeah, perhaps I would first of all confirm what was said by Roger, but I think what is really important is, since I mentioned in my keynote that there are some risks and challenges coming from other areas in the world having huge investments into space programs. I mentioned the US, I mentioned China. In these space programs, there are not only investments coming from the classical space systems or space organizations, also a lot of money comes from military domains with dual use applications. So what I mentioned is we have to take care that we are not risking to have some technologies where we are not independent from others. We have to be sure that we have a sustainable technological base in Europe with all the suppliers, not to come into a dependency position for our systems. Most of you are too young, I think, but you always should take in mind this event of the Symphony satellite in 1967, if I'm not wrong, a telecom satellite, which was the first telecom satellite built in Europe, and it should have been launched with a launcher from the United States. And once it came to the decision to launch it with this US rocket, they said no, because they have seen that this telecom satellite could create competition for the US telecom satellites. And for that reason, they decided not to launch it. So in that sense, and I agree to what was said also by the colleague from the micro launchers, we have to be to some extent independent in access to space. We have to be independent in our technologies. We have to be independent also in our decisions. I'm not saying that we should not cooperate with others, but we should decide always on a basis where we could decide to cooperate, or in case there is no way to cooperate to do this, what we want to do also on our own?
Yeah, maybe let me add my view or our view on that topic, because yeah, the financing is definitely a big thing, I say. And it's not only the amount of money, it's also the way the money is spent and the way the government pushes it, because it's really hard, or it's not a lot of money needed, and it's really hard for one government like the German government to do that on its own, because we are talking about billions of euros. And I also think it's important to include the private sector more in the future on that. And at the moment, there are a lot of projects completely dependent on official money. And if there's, as Rolf, I think, described already, is like at the moment we have the Corona crisis, there might be big issues for those projects if the governments have to cut money, have to cut spending. And if you, like us, are privately funded, it's something that can work like a multiplicator for governmental funding. So if the governments can deliver some framework, some basis you can rely on, you can work this, so that private investors know that there's some backing, they're much more likely to invest as well. And with that, it's a very good way to increase the available resources for the space. And I think that's really important to have the legal framework, to have the engagement of the government, not only for big projects, not only funding big research projects, but also focus on the base and small companies. And competition is really important in my opinion. And it's also good to have it publicly and to have more, I think, like competitions, because I think, again, the USA is a good example there, that you have the space races where everybody knows about it, everybody's engaged. And I think that's important, that people get to know about it in the news if you see different companies competing for projects. And I think one thing that really surprised me is how little people know DLR, for example, in Germany, which is like our main institution we rely on. And if you compare that to NASA, where so many people are wearing NASA pullovers and shoes at the moment, and I think that's also something super important, to have that image and to bring more people to the topic.
Okay. Thanks for these perspectives. I would say we throw in a question from the audience here by Niklas, who wants to know whether we in Europe or in Germany just want to kind of be reactive to anything that comes from NASA or is proposed by ESA, and then we just apply for it and then we do the project. Or do industry representatives like here, Airbus, OHB, or even ESA Aerospace, are you trying to lead this in terms of pitching your own initiatives, as you said, outreach, making it fancy or attractive for teenagers to wear ESA Aerospace hoodies for the next Oktoberfest or something? Is this something that, trying to change, you're trying to address holistically, or do we just want to follow the path that we've been on for the last 20 years?
I wouldn't say that the path of the last 20 years was that we are waiting for contracts which are distributed to the industry. We catch it or we catch it not. We don't catch it. No, it was always that, let's say, it was always a combination. NASA, as an example, is a huge organization with a lot of industry behind. If they are coming with, let's say, let's fly to the moon, or let's build up a space station, of course, this is then very much driving the way of cooperation. But I give you an example, CLTV, which I was presenting, part of the lunar infrastructure, which is now being established jointly with Americans, Europeans, etc. This has been developed in Airbus in, let's say, self-invested R&D, where people were working over years, spending a couple of millions, because the company was convinced we do have the technology, we do have also the reputation to be capable to do this kind of stuff based on previous programs which we did. And meanwhile, NASA and Europe has been convinced, okay, good idea, let's do it. And I think pretty much the same you can find also with other industry. It is always a combination. And in principle, the space program is also representing the number of ideas which have been provided by industry, which have been then assessed by the agency and then finally funded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How does Planet take the spirit? And are you trying to bring some of that mindset of engaging the public and all that from the US to Europe? And if so, how is that received over here or in Germany?
Yeah. We definitely do try to bring it over here. In terms of our marketing, we host, conferences here in the EMEA's time zone, so we can get more publicity out and get people more excited about this. And the other more important thing is that we also want to bring into the market an innovative solution, making sure that people know about the cadence or the resolution that our satellites offer and how they can compete with satellites that are satellite imagery that is mostly used by the ENR institutions, for example, such as Sentinel. And so we can basically compare with that.
Okay, cool. So lots of change, lots of hope. I like it. So with that, I think the question was well answered. Thank you so much. I would say we go on to another one that we will ask to the panel, but also include another Mentimeter to see what the audience thinks of this. So let me share here. The question is, there we go. Does Germany want to continue being the preferred partner? Or is it time for Germany to step up and be the leading partner? I think we've heard already that we have recently become the leading space nation in Europe and the European Union. And well, I guess the audience is pretty clear on their answer. But yeah, maybe how does the panel see this? If you want to get started, maybe Bärbel on this one.
Yes, I think we have got a lot of expertise here in Bavaria as well as all over Germany. So from my point of view, that could be the time to really be a kind of leading partner, having in mind what I think it was Rolf who presented us the amounts which were given from Germany into these ESA budgets. I mean, seeing that, I would agree to that.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the opinion of the audience and consensus is pretty clear.
At least the ambition is there, and I think we are, let's say, all together with the government, with all the industry pushing for becoming the leading nation and pushing therefore also for our ideas. Well, it's a little bit, let's say, the German habit then to see, okay, can you find a compromise with the other nations, or you have a different interest? So let's see if we can bundle that. But in terms of, let's say, financing, in terms of programmatic preparation of programs, I think we have a good path over us, in front of us. Maybe we need one or the other additional resource to do that, and then I think we are on a good path.
Okay. Robin, maybe from your perspective, do you think it's a coincidence that there's currently 3 competing and very ambitious micro-launcher startups in this field, or is this really the rise of Germany being the leader in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely not a coincidence. I'd say first the point of time. Sorry, that with especially manufacturing technology available, it's just the right time to go into this new size class, and there is a demand definitely at that. And yeah, because there is no solution yet. There's not only in Germany but worldwide, there are a lot of companies starting in that topic, and yeah, that explains that and why Germany. I think we also have super good preconditions here in Germany. On the university side, it's pretty close to industry. If you study aerospace engineering here, you know that there are companies where you can go. It makes sense to study that. I think that's super important on university level. Also, yeah, we have the Earth observation for years, so there's also that demand, and we have the governmental support at the moment with the increased budgets, which is a good motivation also for investors to go in that sector because there is a future for that. So also, yeah, on a small level, you have a lot of manufacturers, high precision manufacturers. You have, they know about aerospace materials, so it's possible to actually build everything or most of the parts locally in Germany, and the whole ecosystem. I think it's a really good basis why this is happening now and here.
Great. Perfect.
Oh, super interesting. So Robin, I was thinking, you know, next month is Christmas. You work in a startup. I was wondering, what do startups and from the people you talk to, what do you need from the government and decision makers in order to help you support you more?
A Christmas gift, nice. Yeah, I think it's really important that we are seen by politics in the first place. For example, we have the highly increased ESA budget now, and less than 1% of that is actually available for companies like us at all. So it's mainly focused on the big projects of, yeah, space, or the big companies, I would say. And it's a lot of paperwork to access that money as well, which is a high barrier for small companies. It's not that you just have a nice idea and present it in a few slides and you're liable for some funding of the government, but yeah, there are teams focused just on accessing those monies. And as a small startup with a few students who have a lot on their mind, it's really hard to get into that. So I think it's important to lower the barrier to access that, to have also the state as a potential customer, that we are included into competitions for satellites on either military side or exploration side. And also it's important that you have the least conditions possible, that you have really high level goals only, because the startup tends to do things very differently from the traditional companies. That's why they founded as a startup, have new ideas. And if there's this play between the money from the government and the projects, might happen that they really are made for each other in a way, and maybe not that open for other ways of dealing with a problem. So I think the exchange has to be there, and yeah, it's easy to just not be recognized as a small company with 20 people in the beginning, which is a normal case for a startup, but that's a moment when you need the most support and be recognized.
Okay, cool. Well, it's Christmas time, so I was just wondering, because next year we will write them the white paper. One can include some of these ideas. So we've got in the meantime another question. It's been quite popular with the audience. It's more about politics or geopolitics. So it's about China. So we all know that China deep space program is growing at unprecedented speed. Nevertheless, is also controversial with respect to the politics and this different stance when it compares to the Western countries. So you mentioned before that collaboration, and it's crucial for success. So from a German perspective, the question is, could you foresee some sort of collaboration between Germany and China in this respect? This is open for anyone to take.
Well, there is already some cooperation with China in several fields. So we are providing some components, let's say, because they are already in a situation they can build everything themselves, but in some specific areas there is cooperation. When it comes to, let's say, bigger cooperation, that's always, of course, a political issue. For some science programs, yes, there will always be discussions, maybe to merge that and to cooperate. I personally, I do not believe, taking into account the aspirations of China and the way of cooperation they understand it, that there will be a huge opportunity field for industry or for governments to start a cooperation, because they want to be, let's say, independent. They want to create an autonomous space infrastructure. Not that much opportunities for us.
Yeah, I would like to confirm what Andreas said. Some years ago, we have had some discussions with China to cooperate with them in their lunar landing program, and it became very obvious that China is going away where they want to be independent from non-Chinese sources. They want to build their systems on their own, which is also a question of national pride. I think on critical paths, a cooperation will be difficult in both directions. What is possible already today is to provide some experiments, for example, in scientific applications, which are not on the critical path, exchange of products in both directions. China has a lot of good space products, which you could also buy from China and implement in our systems, at least in the commercial ones. And what is, of course, also a matter of fact, China has more than 1 billion people, and among them are also, just by statistics, a huge number of excellent researchers. So I think also in research, we will see more and more that China will come up with new fundamental research, applied research. So I think from that side, we will see a lot in the future from them.
Okay, that's interesting. Then I would like then to move to the other side of the pond. And I think none of us was missing what was happening in the US during the election time. Well, I wouldn't call it election day. It's more like an election week. So the question is to any of you, what do you think, how do you think the outcome of this recent US election will affect the German ambition in space for the next decade in all that we talked about?
Good point.
I start assuming that at the end, Joe Biden will become the next president.
Let's assume that, yeah.
Yes, let's assume this as a thesis. First of all, I think space was not very much in the focus of the programs in the United States in both parties. But so there is not so much which was discussed publicly. But what is, in my view, a very good sign is that Biden, as a vice president under Obama, was for 8 years responsible for the US space program. Traditionally, in the United States, the space program is the responsibility of the vice president, and so is quite familiar with this topic. Although now his vice president Kamala Harris will do that, space is something which is known very well to Joe Biden. Next, what is, I think, much more obvious for Biden is he is believing in science, he is believing in facts. He has already declared at the first day when he is inaugurated, he will go back to the COP21 program, the Paris Agreement. I think this will also open again the floor for cooperation in Earth observation, Earth science. So I think international cooperation with Biden will be, first of all, based on science, on facts, and it will become easier because I think he is, let's say, less interested in to lead, and everywhere he is much more interested in cooperation.
Okay, and I was seeing Pooja nodding. So I want to ask you then, how do you see then this with a foreseeable return of the US to the COP? How do you see this in your planet view?
Yeah, I think just really just seeing what Rolf said as well, like as you know, I think we all know we all have one winner in our mind, and you know, moving forward from that, we hope that, you know, when this does come into play, that the cooperation is improved and that there is much more focus placed on space programs, especially as, you know, now that they would like to join back the the Paris Agreement, that would really put Earth observation back in the spotlight for them to use this. So yeah, we only can hope that it's much more profound. It's much more profound agreement and a better relationship in the future.
Where we are careful is what's going to happen with the exploration program, because Trump and Pence were very much behind having American foot on the moon by 2024. let's say, everybody was already saying, well, this is not very logical, this is not very scientific, this is something, let's say, this is the national pride program, more or less. We can assume that there will be now, let's say, a more scientific driven approach, which certainly will not accelerate the program.
Great. Well, thanks for the view. I think still it relates with Germany at the end of the day, but we were going a bit more into geopolitics. So then let's move back to German soil. I want to ask Bärbel a question here. So we understand Bavaria is the cluster of Bavarian industries in space, and we also know within the German context, it's a federal republic, so it's a different type of country. The way it's organized is different than other countries which are more centralized. So the question to you is, how do you see this way Germany is organized is putting barriers in the way that Germany as a central entity is going forward with their ambitions? So from your point of view in Bavaria, what do you see? How does this make it difficult to achieve?
I don't think it is really difficult, because we have different federal states, because we don't have space technologies in every single state. So from my point of view, of course, every federal state is looking in order to support its companies, its startups, but nevertheless, it is more a German topic, an overall German topic. So there's not really, this from my point of view is not really a big barrier. What is important from my point of view is that we give somehow a voice to all the companies being here. I mean, we heard from Rolf before that it's important to have sustainable political support, and we heard from Robin that we need some framework conditions that they need in order to proceed with their development. So from my point of view, the really challenge is really to collect all these voices here, not of the big industry, because they have much more context, but from the SMEs and startups. And I think this is one task, and of Bavaria maybe. And this is a point where Bavaria can be a kind of facilitator in order to transport this needs and barrier and maybe things which are working to the political sphere, to the agencies, in order to support the companies here in the regions and in Germany.
Okay. Thank you. Bringing up another question from the audience, from Katrin. She was wondering about how you or how we, all of us, can increase the diversity in the workforce and the future leaders of space. So maybe I'll direct this one to Roger, because I think that this is something that starts early on in the education and research process.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. If we would know the answer.
What do you do?
I would.
How do you recruit?
Well, of course, I mean, we don't recruit at the universities. Of course, people apply or choose to study, for example, engineering or aerospace engineering or any natural science. And so I guess the process has to start earlier. In the schools, young people have to be interested, and of course we have to encourage also the girls that technology is something interesting, and not only for the boys, and it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a man or something else. It just matters if you are interested in the topic, and you can approach this topic from, let's say, in different ways, and this might be one problem that, of course, if we advertise for technology, is always, let's say, the view of the men or the boys, but maybe we have to bring other views, which makes it more interesting also for the others who have maybe a different approach to technology. I don't know. I mean, this is just hypothesis I'm having, and so what we try to do is actually really go to schools and talk about space technology and space applications and the fascination. And I also try to that if we go to schools that I send some of my PhDs, women, so female PhDs, because I think this is encouraging also then in the schools when they can see, okay, there is a woman very successful in this domain of aerospace, which maybe is considered by some as a domain for the men or the boys, and that they can see, okay, this is happening actually already. And I mean, it happens to my institute that we have quite a good level of almost 50-50 in male-female relation, and therefore that's a good thing. I really have the opportunity to also, let's say, put the women in front and say, go and make clear to everybody that it doesn't matter what's your gender. It just matters that you are interested in the topic and that you want to move something, that you want to be involved. And there's many different ways in doing that. And it's not the only one way where people think you always have to sit there with complex material or mathematical equations. So it's, of course, it's part of the hard path you have to go as an engineer, but afterwards there's many ways that you can contribute, and I think that's maybe one approach.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
Yeah, you have to see.
Maybe the view for industry. Let's say, of course, we are, let's say, suffering from the fact that, let's say, starting with schools, with continuing with university, we are somewhere in Germany at a level of 10% female engineers. So Roger probably has, let's say, a similar ratio as we have in the industry population overall. I think we in Airbus in Germany have around 15%, but let's say, but what we do actively is, and I can assure you, let's say, I see that during the last 9 months very intensively, whenever it comes to regular meetings in which we are assessing systematically who are our, let's say, young engineers, high potentials, etc. And particularly also when it comes to, do we have to fill a position? There is always in each and every meeting, there is a discussion popping up. Do we have a female candidate? And so the awareness is there. And what we are trying to do, and as a matter of result, let's say we are trying to push female engineers, high potentials into higher positions, which are then, let's say, when you are coming out of a 10% population, then you have to carefully look, let's say, do we have these people? So we are increasing the effort to find those, but the awareness definitely is there, and we are continuing, because I'm convinced we have to demonstrate, we have to give positive examples in order to, let's say, give also the demonstration to the rest of the population who is struggling, should I take this position or not, that there are opportunities.
Yeah, leading by example, and it's great to hear about this. I think there's lots of other platforms in Germany like Jugendforscht and things that we in the space domain could harness to, to spread the word and start early on. And then this is also one of the missions of SGAC. So yeah, thanks for sharing this.
So we can continue then. Let's take another question from the audience. This one is going back to some of the aspects we already touched early on. So the question is from Florian, and it goes like, with the growing interest in space for security and defense activities and the growing number of space debris, what is Germany doing at both technical and political level, for instance, within COPUS, to guarantee the sustainable use of outer space in the future? So I would add also on top of that, could Germany do something about it? Should Germany do something more about it? Who would like to take this one?
If I may, I would like to answer that. My answer is we could do much more. I joined OHB in 1994, and one of the first projects I was working on was a project on a robotic servicing mission to repair or to demonstrate the repair of a failed satellite in a geostationary orbit. This was an example which ended after 2 years of doing research. After phase B1, the project was cancelled, and there are many, many other examples since then. The last German example was a mission called DEOS, which was also aiming at demonstrating the recovery of a failed satellite in orbit. At the end, it was also cancelled due to other priorities, or in other words, due to a lack of funding. This was then transferred to an ESA program, which was called ED Orbit, with the objective to do active debris removal of the Envisat satellite. It's the biggest European satellite built ever. It failed Easter 2012 and is now in a very critical orbit in about 780 kilometers, 12 tons of debris orbiting around. Most people fear that it once falls on their head, which may happen, but we never will see it. So the risk is, of course, that it is hit by other objects and then creates a lot of other space debris. You know all about this Kessler syndrome, which may then create the situation that we cannot use this orbit anymore. The sun-synchronous Earth orbits are really the most valuable ones for Earth observation. And the problem is also that this debris does not stay there. It spreads over all inclination. It spreads over all altitudes due to these collisions. And so I think we have to do much more on active space debris removal. At the end, it's a question of politics and priorities. There are around 3,000 objects around there, which are all dead. Many, many upper stages of launches from the 60s, from the 70s, mainly from military domains. And there is now the attitude a lot around saying, oh yeah, before we start to invest money to deorbit Envisat, all the others should start to recover their old spent rocket stages. So really what I think is needed is here to have a global agreement that we cannot continue like this, that there is an increasing risk of collision between failed satellites, which then can really for decades pollute our valuable orbits. And I think we have to do much more than we are doing today.
Yeah, maybe as a positive aspect, Rolf, if you allow, on the passive side, at least there seems to be, let's say, some initiatives now. So they are investing in building up their Weltraumlagezentrum. So as they're extending the capabilities, they are investing in new ground-based radar technologies in order to be able to have a much more powerful performing, let's say, tracing, identification of objects. And so at least there is a hope that with the increase of knowledge, of transparency, there will also be an increase of awareness, and therefore the conclusion, we have to do something on the active side as well.
Yeah. I mean, just to add on this, I think as Rolf said, it could be done more, but we do already things, and that's important. And I think we should maybe even, I mean, there was this question if Germany should take the lead. I mean, of course, leadership is maybe on the political side rather. I mean, technically, we have on many areas we are leading, and this could be one part of it. Really, not saying okay, before we start, others should start first because they have more debris in space, but there we could be a sort of a role model and saying, okay, let's start in developing the technology, and then of course, I mean, we heard just about these stories on DEOS and ED Orbit. Of course, it can be frustrating then sometimes, but I think we should keep up this topic. Eventually, as said before, eventually it's if the orbits are not usable anymore, it's yeah, killing the business, so to say, at least a good part of the business. And I think we should hopefully learn maybe from the example of climate change, that even so the consequences are far in the future. We should start today to take the responsibility, and this is hopefully what we learn also for space, and not doing the same mistakes. And maybe there's another aspect this in terms of sustainability and also climate change is, if you talk about all these big constellations, of course, it's a space debris problem. That's clear. And I think it's not really solved yet. And this is a matter of regulations, of laws, space traffic management, as it was said before. So we need that, so that there's not a wild growing of thousands and 10,000s of constellations. But there's another aspect, which is down to earth, so to say. If we have to put up all these satellites, we have hundreds and thousands of launches every year. So we need also green technology on this side. There's very little investigations yet how the exhaust of the rockets, especially in the stratosphere, is affecting the climate. And this is the next thing that pops up if we go for these mega constellations. And I hope that the startups are picking up also on this topic, and at least helping maybe the scientists to understand the effects, because the effects are not yet well understood of the rocket exhaust, which was not a big issue in the past because there were just a few launches, let's say, every year, compared to maybe what may come in the future, where we have thousands of launches per year. So I think we should think globally, and we should take responsibility so that we have really a sustainable space and a sustainable world. And then space technology, space business can be a big contributor to many topics in this respect.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone. We are almost at the end of our time limit here. I would say we do one more round, and also including the audience using Mentimeter here with the final question that we have prepared. So let me share back my screen. And it is, in a few words, what is your vision for Germany by 2030 in space? And maybe while the audience is entering their ideas, I can direct it to Robin. Maybe what kind of customers do you foresee using your direct access capabilities in the future?
For the customer side, yeah, as what says many different. We want to have space in general way more affordable to, let's say, yeah, normal people or private companies, universities, for research and also other applications, especially compared to earlier days when it was really only accessible for governments having their big projects. And we want to have also universities, if there are a lot of student groups developing microsatellites, for example, and give them the chance to access space as a level which is affordable even for a university, or having a lot of startups like, yeah, even like Planet here in this chat to, yeah, decrease the prices for them, have more competition. And yeah, we want to have it more integrated in the normal industry and way more, yeah, present.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. What's the LSI's perspective on the future of Germany in space by 2030? Any innovative, disruptive ideas on the horizon?
If I may start, Andreas, I think I have mentioned a number of new applications to come. We will have commercial services, for example, for ISRU. We will have even more secure communication using optical communication systems with quantum key distributions from space. I think we have to have a careful eye also on the risks that we do not lose against other players by having careful management of our resources, by monitoring carefully also the evolutions of the trends, that we do not miss the right trends. But I think if we continue like we did in the past with our products, which are not cheap, but which offer a lot of value for money because they are high quality. This is really the strength of Germany and Europe, not the cheap products, but the valuable ones, which offer really an added value compared to others. I think then we can even increase our role in Germany and Europe in space in the world.
Yes, I fully support. So what I see is, and this is very much in line with the priority setting in the ministry and in DLR space agency, that we are very much focusing on our key areas and key technologies, key capabilities, which are mainly also in the area of Earth observation. You know, in the history, there have been some huge investments in space station, as an example, and I think the whole industry and the government is suffering from that, because this was completely imbalanced if you see the European participation. And I think they will not do that anymore. They will participate in the lunar infrastructure programs to a certain degree. They might participate in a Mars mission, maybe to a certain degree, but it will not, let's say, use all the budgets. These budgets will more be used for applications, if it is, let's say, launchers, if it is particularly in the Earth observation instrument area. And I think this has the biggest potential also for commercialization. Therefore, I think very much in line also with, let's say, with our intentions.
Okay, great. I see from the audience a lot of inputs on leadership and being at the forefront. Is this something that Bavaria is having on their agenda as well to foster this even more in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think, of course, this is a part. It comes together with these international collaborations, which I see here as well as giving our members and actors a kind of view on the global stage, so that they can be seen on the one hand. And what I'd like to add is really that we will be in the future a kind of facilitator in order really to communicate what is needed in terms of make all these business being able to go ahead.
Okay, great. In terms of Planet's view, are we there at the peak yet of innovation, or are there any big things coming up in the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of Planet, I think definitely looking forward to 2030, you know, we want Germany to be not only like the preferred partner for everyone operating in the sector, or the leading partner, but also that we also want, you know, the space component here, and the definition of space here for me includes downstream services. And, you know, we want, and from my perspective, it's, you know, where we can take data from space and make actionable outcomes relevant for Earth. And I hope that in 2030, you know, Germany is a leading nation with respect to creation of geospatial services that act as a driver for world-leading innovation in the downstream space segment as well.
Okay, great. And in terms of academia and research, what kind of research topics are you working on currently, which will be probably implemented in 10 years into the industry? Roger?
Well, I guess a big topic is, let's say, the digitalization in general, software-defined functionalities, but of course also AI, artificial intelligence applied in space, the big data, the clouds, internet in space, and all that stuff. Of course, that's something which is a lot of research is ongoing in this direction. So, and I hope that in terms of vision for Germany, that we will be leaders also in this technology. So I agree, we should take the lead also on a political level, but also, of course, keeping up with our technology, so that we keep the lead also in the new, let's say, new technologies, which is not, let's say, historically maybe coming from as a core technology from Germany, but that we can at least keep up, or catch up again, so to say, especially in this digitized world. So, and yeah, well, the other vision would be really that, of course, there's an understanding in the public how important space is. And one other aspect, because I think it's important that we contribute to the fact that space stays a peaceful place. I think you know, there are some things ongoing which concerns me a little bit in this direction, and I hope that we can contribute also on this level, that space is for everybody and we use it all together in a peaceful way. So that would be my visions, let's say.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for this. This is the last question, and it's going to be exciting to see whether what we define today as new space will be old space by 2030.
Cool. So thanks, Marcus. So then let's just close. We heard a lot of things. We heard that Earth observation might be one of the most important priorities that Germany should take. We learned how technological sovereignty is key in order to deliver on the ambition. We also learned that we need more sustained political support, and still some more support to startups is required in order to deliver on this ambition by 2030. So I would say that then there's quite a high level of ambition. It can be perceived, and we're talking about it. So let's just roll up our sleeves. Let's work towards that together, and let's make Earth a better place by 2030 to live and enabled by space technology, of course. I want to close by thanking all the partners, thanking all of you that you took 2 hours of your time on this Sunday to be here with us. I want to thank the sponsors that made this possible, and a special mention to Spacewatch Global, which allowed us to have this Zoom platform to run this panel. So I would say, let's not miss the next events on the virtual Space Generation Germany. The next one is the Space Trivia Night on Wednesday. We'll have a panel the next weekend. And let's stay in touch. Bring a beer as well for the Space Trivia Night. And with that, I just want to say, have a good end of the week and have a good start of the week after. So take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, and thank you much for hosting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are we done with the streaming? Hi, Torsten. Are we good with the streaming? Is it finished?